of the season. Last year, we discussed about some aspects of the economies, where we explain what economics is all about and the scale, the preference, and the this thing, the economic system, mixed economies, socialist, all those one we discussed about it last year. And this year now, today, we want to discuss about the demand and law of demand. That's the next topic, following the topic. So based on the syllabus now, if we move from demand and law of demand, then we can now talk about some aspect of the demand. That's the concept of demand. So today we want to talk about what demand is all about. In economics, you don't have to cram it before you define what demand is all about. What you need to know about economics is it's just a way of life. How do we live our normal life? If you are talking about demand is just talking about ability to buy, willingness to buy a certain thing. If you are able, you are willing to buy. Hello? If you are willing to buy something and you end up buying it, that's demand. So economics is not about you defining something based on the textbook or based on the concept, the way they define it. It's all about you understand the rudiment, the basic, and the major points in that particular definition of what you are trying to define. So let's go back to the normal definition of it. The demand for a commodity is its quantity which consumers are able and willing to buy at various prices during a given period of time. What you are willing and you are able to buy it at various. If I go to market now, okay, I want to buy exercise book. I'm willing to buy that exercise book. Do I have the money to buy the exercise book? If the answer is yes, that means I have the capability to buy it. So in that situation, I have now say, okay, let me go to the market to buy it. Once I'm able to buy that exercise book based on price given to me, if I'm okay with the price and I'm able to buy it, that means demand has occurred. At that point, you've practiced or you've examined what demand is all about. So that's demand. But for you to define demand, there's those major points that you have to put into consideration are the ability, that means able, willingness at various prices, the price level at a given point in time. As at that time, what you are buying, that's the demand for a commodity. So for a commodity to have demand, the consumer must possess willingness to buy it and the ability or means to buy it, and it must be related to per unit of time. Those are the key points that I needed to know about what demand is all about. Willingness to buy, the ability to buy. And let's discuss about the factors. What are the factors that influence or factors that determine what to buy, the quantity to buy, at that particular point? So if you are talking about the quantity to buy, what are those factors that you have to put into consideration before you buy a particular item? That's the factors that affect demand, factors that affect what you are to buy. The first factor that determines what to buy, the quantity to buy, is the price of the commodity. That's the first thing. The price of the commodity, if the price of the commodity is high, you can change your mind and say, okay, I won't buy this product again. Or I buy little out of it. Instead of you buy 10 exercise books before, you change your mind to buy 2 because the price is so high. But if the price is low, you have a budget of 100 naira. You went to the market with the target, okay, you are going to get this exercise book for 100 naira. Then when you go to the market, you discover that the price of the phone, of the exercise book, it's 70 naira. Instead of you buying 5 before, you can change your mind and buy 7 of it or 8. So that means the price of that particular commodity has influenced the quantity you intend to buy before. So it ends up determining what you are to buy. I mean, it has affected the demand of that particular commodity. That's number one. The second factor, it's the price of other commodities. The first price that we'll discuss about now is the price of its own commodity. That's the price of that particular product you want to buy. So the second aspect is price of other commodities that are related to it. You are going to the market now to buy close-up. That's toothpaste. So we have variety of it. So, but your favorite one, your preferential, the preferred product is close-up. So if you now enter the market and discover that the price of Maclean has come down, you can decide to change your mind and switch to another product. Or instead of you buying 3 of it before, you rather buy 1 of close-up and 2 of Maclean. So at that point, the price of other commodity has affected or influenced it. Another example is, let's look at if the price of Coke changed from 150 to 200, whereas the price of Pepsi is still on 120. You can decide, instead of you buying Coke, you just say, instead of me spending 200 now on Coke, I would rather buy Pepsi. So at that point, you've changed your mind. The price of Pepsi has affected the price of Coke that you used to buy. So because the price of Pepsi has come down, you can change your mind. So at that point, if you are discussing about price of other commodities, we have to divide it in 3 different sections or paragraphs. So because price of other commodity we are talking about, we have different commodities. We have substitute goods, we have complement goods. Hello, asking question. That means if you are talking about substitute goods, goods that see for one another, commodity that if the price of one rise, the quantity for the other one will fall, will increase. Sorry, what I'm saying is that if the price of Coke increased, the demand, that means the demand for Pepsi will increase. Your people will switch from Coke and go back to Pepsi and buy more Pepsi instead of them buying Coke. At that point, due to the increment in the price of Coke, it's brought about the increase in demand for Pepsi. So that's substitute goods. Or if the price of okay, let's look at another example now. goods, any goods like Maclean and close-up. If the price of close-up goes up, people will switch. Consumers will switch from that close-up to Maclean. That means the quantity they are buying for Maclean will go up, while the quantity buying from close-up will fall. That's why most of the times, if they have to ask question from this particular aspect, if the examiner wants to examine you, and that is understand the concept behind this, what they ask you is that if the price of a substitute goods, let's say commodity A, increase, what will happen to quantity demand for commodity B? That means the quantity demand for commodity B too will increase. That's why they always say a substitute goods has positive relationship. Substitute goods has positive relationship between price and quantity. But if the price of one increase, quantity demand for the other one will increase. They can set it in three aspects. I've explained two. The third aspect of it that they can set this kind of question from is that what kind of commodity that has positive relationship, you know that, okay, that one is a substitute goods. So let's move on to the second aspect of it under price of other commodities. We have complementary commodities. That means goods that works together, where the demand for two commodities is linked to each other, such as cars and petrol. They are complementary. They can't do without each other. Car cannot move without petrol. Without kerosene, stove cannot work. You have to put it in. So price of stove influence the price of kerosene, demand for kerosene. If you are talking about price for one, you talk about quantity for the second one. So price of car or price of petrol determines price of quantity demand for car. If the price of petrol now is now, for example, let us say that the price of petrol, instead of 165 or 166, they now increase the price of petrol from that 166 to 500 or 800. Whoever's willing or ready car before, they will reduce their consumption and start jumping bus from one bus stop to another. Because if you look at petrol, the petrol you have to buy and put inside the car for it to move, so higher than the cost you are going to incur in jumping bus to another. Hello? I think, is there any questions? Hello? Any question? In the absence of no question, I would like to continue. The network is breaking. So
yeah.
Hello?
No, you can continue.
Okay, let's continue. Okay. Now, goods. So those commodity that they goes together, they go. If you buy A, you have to buy B. You can't consume A without consuming B. In that situation, if the price of car one increase, the demand for the other one will reduce. They have a negative relationship. That's the difference between them. They have a negative relationship. If the demand for one increase, if the price of one increase, demand for the second one will reduce. If the price of petrol increase, the demand for car will come down. There is a negative relationship between both of them. So the third aspect of it is called the unrelated goods. If the two commodities are unrelated, they are not related at all. They don't have any relationship. A change in the price of one will have no effect on the quantity demanded for the other one. That one, there is a zero relationship. The price of one will not affect the demand for the other. Like if you are talking about TV and car and drive your car without having TV. You can have TV and watch a movie or see programs, all those stuff without having car. It has no relationship. So once there's a price increment in TV, it doesn't have effect. It's not going to affect car. Car consumption or car's quantity demanded will still remain the same. That's unrelated goods. So they don't have any relationship. So those are the three commodity under price of other commodities and other goods. So we've explained two factors under that affect demand. So we want to talk about the third one. And the third factor is income. A rise in the consumer's income raises the demand for a commodity, and a fall in its income reduces the demand for the commodity. Now, if there is increase in your income, you will demand more, you buy more of certain goods depending on your choice. So, but if your income reduce, you also reduce your consumption on those goods. So the higher your income, the higher your demand, quantity demanded. The lower the income, the lower the quantity demanded. Because without income, you won't be able to buy anything. That's number 3. Number 4, the fourth one is taste. Taste. The taste you have for a particular product will make you buy that product, irrespective of every other thing that surrounded it. When there is a change in the taste of consumers in favor of a commodity, say due to fashion, new style, it's going to affect the quantity you are buying for that particular commodity. Now, someone that is used to taking of mortar can, that's mortar Guinness can, you are used to it and you have a certain taste you are expected from that mortar can. And suddenly you drank one, you discover that the taste has changed. And you pick another one, you now see that the taste has also changed. So if then the new taste is not your favorite one, you will change your demand. You switch to another product, or you buy little of that Coke, of that mortar can, and buy more of some other products. So in that situation, taste has affected your demand. Taste has affected your demand. These are the 4 major factors that affect demand. We have some other factors, but at this level, these are the 4 major factors that affect demand. We have some other factors like government policy, economic crisis, war, a lot of other factors. But at this particular level, those are the major factors that you have to look at. So, do we have any question for me? Before we move on to another concept under it. So in the absence of no question, then let's continue. The other aspects of it is individuals' demand schedule and curve. We have individual demand schedule. We have demand curve. So if you are talking about demand schedule, it's talking about it's a table that shows relationship between price and quantity. It's a table that shows relationship between price and quantity. That's the unit you are buying, at what, how many quantity are at what price are they giving you those products. So how many were you able to buy at that particular price? So it shows the relationship that exists between the price and the quantity. That's the schedule. Now, if you're not talking about individuals' demand schedule, it's talking about the quantity that the consumer, that particular consumer, is willing or is ready to buy at that particular price. An individual demand for commodity is shown on the demand schedule and on the demand curve. A demand schedule is a list of prices and quantities on a particular table. So why if you are talking about demand curve, it's talking about the relationship that exists between price and demand on a graph. That means if you are drawing it, what are the relationship that exists between them? Is it the higher the price, the lower the quantity? Is that the relationship that exists? Or reverse is the case, depending on the relationship. But it's just the combination of the price and quantity. If you are dividing demand curve, you look at the price, the relationship between the price and quantity on a graph or on a curve. But if you are talking about the schedule, you are talking about the table aspect of it. Then we cannot talk about, like I said, individual demand. That means what Mr. A is buying in that market. So we can as well talk about the total demand. That means the market, they call it market demand. Market demand is talking about the total demand for a particular commodity. That's it. What Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, down to Mr. Z, what they are buying in the market. If you add everything together, you are talking about the market demand. That's the total demand for that particular product. So that's the summation of total of various quantity demanded by all the individuals at various prices. That's market demand. So we have market demand. We also have market demand schedule and also have market demand curve. So the three of them, they have different view, but they are referring to the same thing. Whenever you see markets, just know that they are talking about the total, the summation of everything. So the market demand schedule is talking about the relationship that exists between the price, the total price in the market, and the total quantity demanded at that price level for all the consumers. So for consumer A, what did you buy at 6 naira? Were you able to buy 20 quantity? For consumer B, what were you able to buy at the same 6 naira? For C, how many quantities were you able to buy at the same 6 naira? So that's the table. It's a table that shows the relationship. So when the price now fall to 5 naira, how many quantities were you able to buy? So at that point, they will also track it to each of the demand, each of the consumers in the market to know the quantity they bought when the price change, either fall or increase. There's a rise in it, were you able to buy the same quantity? So the same table you can also plug the same table on curve, on graph as a curve. So at that point, we are talking about market demand curve. So the market demand curve is the horizontal summation of all the individuals' demand curve. All the individual demand curves, you now summarize everything on one graph. That's on one sketch. So on that graph, you'll be having like 4 or 5 different curves. On one graph, you'll be having 4 or 5 different curves. A curve, one represents one demand, one consumer, while the next one represents another consumer. Another consumer. So the totality of it gives you market demand curve. At this point, do you have any question? Okay, no problem. So the other aspect of it, you can plot each of these ones on the graph, and we do that one in our next class. So the other aspect of it is the law of demand. The law of demand. The law of demand is nothing special, but it's just talking about the relationship that exists between price and quantity. Just talking about the relationship that exists between price and quantity. So the law is talking about when the price of this commodity increase, what do you buy? Each consumer, what are they willing to buy? Were you able to buy what you are buying before when the price increased? Did you reduce the quantity you're buying before? So that's what demand law tried to establish. So if you look at it, the law of demand expresses a relationship between the quantity demanded and its price. So that's the standard definition. So there are many factors that also affect that. Like those factors that we express in factors that affect demand. They are also applicable on law of demand. So the law of demand What determines if the price change, how many quantity were you able to buy? That's the higher the demand, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. Sorry, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. There is an inverse relationship between quantity and price. What the law established there is that when you are buying close up for 200 naira, how many were you able to buy, or how many do you use to buy in a month?
Sorry, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You have like 9 minutes more.
Okay, no problem. How many were you able to buy within that month? If they now increase the price to 300 naira, can you buy it? How many are you able to buy? So the higher the price, the lower the quantity. You have intention, you are buying 20 pack of malt before. Now you now discover that they increase the price from 3,006 to 5,000 naira. You'll be able to buy that 20 again because your income still remains the same. You still have the same level of income. For that reason, you now go for something lower than that. Something lower than that. That's what the law of demand is establishing. But let's assume the price of Coke, motor can was 3,006. They now reduce the price to 3,000 naira. When the price was 3,006, you are buying 20. Now they reduce the price to 3,000 naira. You buy more of it. Can we buy like 30? That's the law of demand. There are many assumptions under it. The assumption that we are talking about is talking about the factors that affect it. When there is no change in taste and preferences of the consumers, the income of the consumer still remains the same. Those are the assumptions. There is no change in customs. The commodity to be used should not convert or distinguish on the consumer's behavior. Now, what we are saying is that for that law to be effective, there are some assumptions that you need to put into consideration. And one of them is changes in the taste and preference. You are saying that there is no changes in the taste and preference of that product. That means the Coke, yesterday Coke is still the same Coke today. The income of the consumer remains constant. That means there is no change in your income. Your income still stands. You are earning 200,000 naira. And the 200,000 naira is still the same thing. So, and the price now change. So that will now influence what you are buying. Another aspect of it, there should not be, hello? There should not be any change in the prices of other products. Other products still remain, they still stand on their point. So when there is no changes in other products, that means you don't have to consider other products, you are paying attention to that product alone. Those are the assumptions in the product. There is no changes in the quality of the product. The habits of consumers should remain unchanged. You don't have any habit towards the product. So if there is a change in the price, the law of demand will take place. So to that effect, we have causes of downward sloping demand curve. What are those things that can make demand curve to slope upward or downward? So your demand curve has a negative relationship. That means sloping from up down. So it has a negative relationship. So what are those things that can cause it? It's all those factors that we explained earlier. The factors that affect the demand. So we can as well move on to exception to the law of demand. There are some exceptions to the law of demand. There are some things that will make law of demand to fail. There are some things that will make law of demand not to be applicable. Number one thing that can make law of demand not to be applicable is when there is war. When there is war in the country, there is going to be a persistent increment in the prices of goods and services. And that is what is applicable, and that is what is happening in this country now. War. So because of that, there is going to be a failure, or the law of demand will not be able to be applicable again. When during the war, there's going to be a scarcity of food. So people will not be able to get excess for you to say, okay, if they increase the price, you won't buy the quantity you are buying again. You end up buying it because there is no food. That was exactly what is happening now. Boko Haram are killing, they are doing all those sort of things. People cannot go to the farm. So there's war. And because of that, we have shortage of food. So what they are selling before, the price now increase. That's one of it. Due to the fact that there is war from north, or people that are supposed to go to the farm, they are unable to go to the farm. So another aspect of it is speculation. Speculation as one of the important exceptions to the downward sloping demand curve. According to the law, that's law of demand. Law of demand does not apply to the demand in a campaign between groups of speculators. When we are talking about speculation, we are looking at the market. When people are expecting, or they are thinking that, okay, there's going to be something that will happen that will make the price of this product to change. At that point, you just
We have
discover
4
that
minutes to go.
so many people. Oh, sorry, well, we don't have enough time again. I have to round up at this point. Next week we continue from where we stopped. We've discussed about what demand is all about and discussed about the factors that affect demand. Under the factors that affect demand, we're able to distinguish 4 factors that affect demand. One out of them is price of the commodity. That's own price, its own price. The second aspect of it is price of other commodities. Under price of other commodities, we're able to distinguish between substitute goods, complementary goods, and unrelated goods. From that point, we also discuss about the income, which is the third category. Then we discuss about the taste. We also discuss about the law that affects demand, law of demand. At that point, we were able to explain the concept behind it. We also discuss about the exception to the law of demand. So I believe we were able to grab a lot of things. Do we have any question for me? Do you have any question for me?